Okay, thank you for coming along this morning. Today we released Labor's tax plan. It doesn't contain any new policy, but it does clarify some aspects of the tax working group. It's been necessary to bring together all of our already announced tax policies due to the amount of misinformation and lies about our tax policy that the National Party has been putting about. Labor is committed to a progressive tax system where everybody pays their fair share. We want to make sure that New Zealanders have confidence and certainty in their tax system and that it is ready for the changing world of work. Labor has committed itself not to increasing personal income taxes or corporate taxes or GST. What we are going to do is reverse National's tax cuts that are due to come into force in April next year. We're doing that because that money needs to be spent on lifting families out of poverty, on investing in health and education and in housing. The National Party have been spinning lies that Labor is increasing personal taxes. We are not. New Zealanders will not be paying more in personal income taxes in the future under a Labor government than they are today. A major focus of Labor's tax policy and tax plan has been cracking down on speculators who are exploiting loopholes in our tax system. In particular, that means cracking down on negative gearing and also extending out the bright line test that the National Party brought in that effectively taxes the capital gain on a property that is not your family home that is being sold. National have that for 2 years. We are extending that out to 5 years. We are also going to crack down on multinational tax avoidance. We believe that companies that operate in New Zealand should be paying their fair share of tax, and we have made clear that we will consult on the introduction of a diverted profits tax if multinationals are not prepared to step up and pay their own way. We are, of course, also putting in place a tax working group. It is important to do this work so that we get a fairer tax system and a better balance in our economy between speculation and productivity. That tax working group's work is urgent and important, and that's why we need to get it underway. But we also need to balance that urgency with the certainty that New Zealanders need from their tax system. We will undertake the work and we will take it through to legislation. But no outcomes from the tax working group will come into force until the 2021 tax year, i.e. 1 April 2021.
And that is because why?
Because we want to get the balance right between the urgency of undertaking this work of fixing the housing crisis and of giving New Zealanders certainty.
Does that suggest that you're taking a political hit from the uncertainty around capital gains tax?
What we've done is we've listened to New Zealanders who want to be involved in this process. So the timeline that we've outlined for the working group provides numerous opportunities for New Zealanders to input both during the working group's work itself, then when Cabinet will consider the recommendations, and then when Parliament will consider those recommendations. And then, yes, New Zealanders will then make their judgment upon that. That is their right.
So the working group's recommendations will be part of the Labor Party's 2020 election manifesto?
Correct. So we will be, you'll see in the documents that we've put out today that it is our expectation that we will have passed legislation to implement whatever the Cabinet decides to take from the working group's recommendations, but it will not take effect until the next tax year, and therefore people will be able to make their judgments on that.
So it's sort of in between Jacinda Ardern and Andrew Little's?
Well, I think it is Jacinda Ardern's stance. She is seized of the view that we have to urgently address our housing crisis and that our tax system plays a big part in fuelling that crisis. We will have done the work, we will have passed the legislation, but nobody will be paying any tax as a result of the working group's outcomes until the 1st of April 2021.
Why has he waited this long to make that decision?
Oh, look, as I say, we have listened to New Zealanders. New Zealanders want to be involved in this process. It's quite clear that when it comes to taxation, we need to provide both certainty, but also that sense of urgency. So we've created a large number of opportunities for New Zealanders to be involved in the process. When you put that timeline out, we think it's important then that it comes in at the beginning of a tax year. The next tax year is 1 April 2021.
Do you accept this has hurt you in the campaign and that it could actually be the difference between winning and losing?
What I've seen in this campaign is a desperate series of lies and spin from the National Party about taxation. It is very important that New Zealanders are clear about what we have planned. And I do want to say this, every single one of the commitments that Labor has made in the next term of government, 3 years free post-secondary school education and training, fixing our health system, getting 1,000 extra police, building in the Kiwi Build program, All of that work is fully costed and paid for with existing revenue. It never did, and it does not rely upon the outcomes of the tax working group.
Was it a miscalculation not to do this right from the outset?
Look, we have been clear with New Zealanders that we wanted to take on this work. It has become clear during the process of this election that we need to balance our sense of urgency with fixing the housing crisis with a sense of certainty for New Zealanders. We are prepared to listen to New Zealanders, and that's what we've done.
Started voting to release this. I mean, people have already voted.
Well, nothing has changed about the sense of direction that Labor has for our tax system. We have said all along that we need a better balance in our tax system. What we have done today is be clear about that timeline and balance the urgency and certainty that is required.
All of the talk before Jacinda Ardern became leader was that the tax working group will look at fairness across income, assets and wealth. This is now seems to have changed to fixing the housing crisis. Is that an actual change?
No, I think it's a focus. That is where we believe the most important rebalancing in the tax system has to happen. There are loopholes in our tax system that encourage speculation on property. I think all New Zealanders understand that when they go to work every day and pay tax on every cent of income that they earn, that they want that fairness to be seen across the system. So the principle of the working group, the terms of reference of the working group remain balance and fairness in our tax system with a particular focus on making sure that we crack down on property speculation.
But about assets and wealth seems to have gone because we're missing out family home, we're missing out inheritance tax, which is a huge...
Look, Alex, nothing has changed in the way that we've been doing this since Jacinda became the leader.
Some of your political opponents might categorise this as a back down. How would you? Is that correct?
No, we are continuing with the urgent work of fixing up our housing crisis and making sure that the tax system does not provide loopholes and does not have an imbalance in it. We're doing that work. The working group will come up with its recommendations. Cabinet will decide upon those. The public will be involved all the way through, and we intend to pass legislation. So we're still doing the work. What we are doing is listening to New Zealanders about their desire for certainty and their desire to be able to have a say.
This is a back down because people are worried that you are going to introduce taxes that you haven't flagged, isn't it?
No, as I said, this is about making sure that we do the urgent work that is required to fix our housing crisis and make sure our tax system does not fuel that. What we are saying is New Zealanders will be able to see that, it will be legislated, but that will not come into effect until 1 April 2021, by which time they can make their judgment on that. I might say too, James, that it's absolutely no different to what National are doing with tax cuts. So they have legislated for those, but they do not come into force until 1 April. At this election, New Zealanders have a choice about whether or not they have tax cuts that give $400 million to the top 10%, or whether or not they actually choose to use that money to invest in families and public services, as Labor wants to do.
When was the decision made?
Sorry?
The difference is that voters know exactly what that is at this point. They don't know that.
But with the point being here that, Karen, that in 2020 they will know exactly what we are doing because we will have legislated for it. It will not have come into effect, and New Zealanders will then be able to make the judgment. It's exactly the same as this election.
But you weren't going to do that originally, so this is a back down, isn't it?
We have listened to New Zealanders' desire to be part of this conversation and to provide certainty. The bit that we are continuing with is the work of the group. We're not going to sit around and wait, as National have done, for the housing crisis to get worse and worse. The work will be done, and New Zealanders will have an opportunity to make a judgment on it.
Serious about clarity, why don't you promise to Kiwis that you won't legislate any new taxes until after the next election?
That's exactly what we've done, James.
No, that's not what you've done. You said you're going to legislate them, but they won't take effect.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the position that the National Party is in at this election with their tax cuts package. And I think New Zealanders will appreciate the fact that the work needs to be done. We cannot sit around and let the housing crisis get worse and worse as National have done over the last 9 years. We will do the work, we will make sure New Zealanders see it, and if they don't want it, then they won't have to have it.
Grant, you've ruled out GST you've ruled out CGT on the family home, you've ruled out land tax on the family section. We've got the bright line test going out to 5 years for residential property. So what else is left in terms of fixing the housing crisis that you can bring in? To me, it just seems like tax on vacant land tax on vacant land. Is there anything else?
Well, no, that's the job of the working group. We have put forward our policies at this election, which, as I've said many times before, are about a direction of travel towards rebalancing our tax system. The working group's job is to see whether or not there is more that can be done in that area.
But that basically just leaves tax on vacant land, don't you agree?
Well, no, it doesn't. Not at all. I mean, we've still got the issue of what happens with speculation more generally in the property market, and we've got to make sure we do everything we can. We owe it to New Zealanders to make sure that they can get in, buy their first home, make sure that our housing market is not part of a speculator's dream. We have to do something about
Wasn't
that.
that tackled by the bright line test?
The Bright Line test only goes out to 5 years. The question for the working group is that enough? And I think we've made that clear all the way through the process.
Are a further out, a longer bright line test and tax on vacant land.
As we've said all the way through this, we want the tax working group, the experts, the people who are affected by this in the community to be able to have their say on how we extend that out.
Would this group look at capital gains tax beyond property, real estate, if you like?
Well, we've been very clear in the documents what we want to have happen here. We've ruled out tax on the capital gains tax on the family home. We've ruled out a land tax on the land under the family home. We want the working group to be able to find a way of rebalancing the system. And let's be absolutely clear, whatever outcomes come from that working group that the government decides to pick up will not come into force until 2021, by which time New Zealanders will be able to have their say. So I'm not going to go into any more prejudging of the working group.
Well, what I'm getting at is that you're talking a lot about property, but in 2014 you talked about collectibles and other assets, other elements as well.
What we are signalling as the Labour Party's policy is that our focus is on fixing the housing crisis. That is our focus. The working group have been given the mandate to get a fairer and better balanced tax system. We will then look at the recommendations. A future cabinet may or may not take up all of those recommendations, as has been the case in previous tax working groups. Its ambit is clearly written down in the documents that we put out today, which is to get a fairer and better balanced tax system with a particular focus on moving ourselves away from property speculation and more towards incentives to invest in the productive economy.
Will the tax working group look at the GST? It's a very regressive tax.
No, we have said that there will be no changes to GST.
But for all the recommendations that you legislate for, would you expect them to be revenue neutral?
That'll be one of the things that I think the group will certainly be looking at. It is quite clear that if we are rebalancing the tax system, a revenue neutral outcome is one of the outcomes that is quite likely, but we want to give the working group the ability to come back to us and come back with what they believe is best for New Zealand. But revenue neutral outcomes could indeed be one of those.
So we could see Robertson have their say on
the group by ruling out those changes.
We want to be clear about what the Labour Party stands for, and the Labour Party stands for making sure that people have confidence and certainty that their family home is their family home, and we've ruled that out. There are certain taxes that we simply don't believe are consistent with Labour values or New Zealanders' values. They are the things that we have ruled out.
Just back to revenue neutrality, so we could see drops in income tax if you can find...
Again, I know you all want me to write the tax working group's report for you right here in front of you today, but that is indeed one of the possible options. If we are looking at a rebalancing of the tax system, it may well be a revenue neutral outcome. That is one of the things that the working group will be able to come forward. But I want to be absolutely clear today. When New Zealanders see what we are doing, they will have many opportunities to have input into it, and then it will only come into force on 1 April 2021, and by which stage they will have an opportunity to make their judgment on whether they believe that is the right way forward for New Zealand.
Final questions, please. When you're involved in negotiations, possibly in 2 weeks' time, would you expect to make upholding the tax working group recommendations a confidence issue, establishing that in negotiations, or will you leave that until the time?
I'm definitely not doing coalition negotiations standing here today. What I can say is that the Labour Party is committed to a fair and progressive tax system. We're committed to fixing the housing crisis, and we want to work with people who share those same aims.
Brian, just to
Thanks.
clarify quickly, if you want them to have their say and have certainty, why don't you adopt these recommendations as policy, take it to the 2020 election, and then legislate it after that?
Because we have a greater sense of urgency in fixing the housing crisis than that. New Zealanders will still get to have their say, but we are not going to sit around and wait for another couple more years to fix the housing crisis.
But it won't be
Last
until
question.
2021 anyway, will it?
Yeah, but the risk of not going forward with urgency is it would be even later than that, and we're not prepared to do that.
Was this vagueness, this kind of vacuum that your enemies have filled with, you know, talk of personal tax hikes and all this stuff, was that a mistake?
No, what our opponents have done is desperately smear and lie about Labor's intentions at this election. We have said for a very long time that we will reverse Nationals tax cuts. We have never said that we will increase taxes, and New Zealanders do have a choice at this election about whether or not they want to invest in rebuilding our health and housing and education systems, making 70% of families with children better off, or giving tax cuts. I am happy to have that debate, but I am not happy to have the National Party misrepresent our position, and I'm sorry I do have to go.